Da ni yma heddiw ym Mhlas yn Iâl, Bryn Eglwys, efo Huw Beach, lle da ni wedi bod yn gweithio ar y prosiect ers chydig cyn y Dolig on. Mae'n edrych ar rheolaeth y coedlanna yma ym Mhlas yn Iâl. Nath ni gyfarfod cynta mewn digwyddiad cyswllt ffermio oddi, Huw, yn y Bala, nôl yn mis Mawrth, flwyddyn dwytha, jyst cyn y cyfnod clo, lly. A wedyn yn dilyn y cyfarfod yna, mi nath ni benderfynu fysa'n fuddiol i Huw gael mentora efo Phil Morgan, lly. A wedyn, o'r 15 awr yna, mi nath ni lunio prosiect yn canolbwyntio ar rheolaeth y coedlanna yma ym Mhlas yn Iâl. So, ia, yn gyntaf oll, diolch yn fawr am y croeso yma a fod yn rhan o'r prosiect. Sa'ch chi rhoi chdig o gefndir i ni i Mhlas yn Iâl?
Mewn tad, diolch yn fawr i chi. Ia, wir, croeso i Mhlas yn Iâl. Bach o hanes am y ffarm Llŷden ni rhwng Bryn Eglwys a Llandegla. Mae rhyw ffarm, rhyw 190 o aceri, rhyw 75 hectar ydi lle, a dwi di'r trydydd genhedlaeth yma erbyn hyn lle yn had a 9 brynwyd y ffarm yn had o drws nesa yn rwyddiol lle. Ac mae'n ffarm sydd yn ymestyn o rhyw 800 rhodfedd i lawr yn gwylod y Dyffryn Iâl, ac da ni'n dod yn ei wan yn y man ucha ar y ffarm rhyw 1,300 o drodfeddi. Mae'n ardal, wel, da ni wan yn eitha anial, o le lle, a wedyn fel canran o'r ffarm lle, mae'n ganran fawr ohoni yn goed lle. Mae'n rhyw 20% o arwynebedd yn goed lle. Ac dyna lle di'r diddordebau di bod i edrych i fewn i dipyn bach ar be ddylswn ni'n neud efo gymaint o goed ar y ffarm.
Ia. A wedyn, be nath i chi fod eisiau bod yn fferm ffocws efo ni, Huw, a be ydych chi'n obeithio gael allan o'r gwybodaeth a'r cyngor drwy'r prosiect a gan Phil Morgan, lly?
Wel, cyngor o'n i angen mwy na'm byd. Mae'n gyrsiau gwych i gael ynglyn â sut i wella'r tir a sut i gael ffeithlonrwydd allan o'r tir, ond oedd o'n faes lle doeddwn ni'n gwybod am gymaint amdano fo sut i edrych ar y coed i raddau, sut i gael mwy allan o'r coed. Ac i raddau o'n i wedi bod yn anwybyddu y goedlan yn gweld bod i'r unig fydd ohoni oedd cysgod i'r stoc a hefyd bach o goed tân. A wedyn dwi'n meddwl trwy gorfodi edrych ar sut i gynesu'r tŷ. Mae'r tŷ yn fawr am y lle, a wedyn o rhaid i ni benderfynu sut ni'n mynd i gynesu'r tŷ. Ac felly ni benderfynu fynd lawr trwydd o gael biomass boiler, ac o wybod bod yna gymaint o goed yma, o'n i'n ymwybodol wrach bob modd, wrach cynaeafu dipyn o'r goed, ond sut i fynd ati oedd o'n faes diarth, ac o'n i'n gwybod sut i fynd o gwmpas i, felly o fynychu'r cwrs yna draw yn Bala blwyddyn yn ôl wan, lle a wybod bod yna gyfoeth o gyngor yna a cael Phil Morgan yma i fentora a cael ei gyngor o a'i top tips o. Yndi, mae wedi bod yn agoriad llygad, a sut i edrych ar goedlan, sut i ddehongli, a sut i wybod sut i dowlyd a pa goeden i gymryd allan a bob blodd nid o'n gynaladwy, ond hefyd o'n i'n wedi dall bod posib gwneud y cynefin yn fwy gynaladwy a cael mwy allan o'r coed. So, felly mae wedi bod yn agoriad llygad. Sut i fwrw ati, lly.
O, da iawn. Nath chi grybwyll llawanna sydyn y biomass a yn amlwg y gwaith dech chi'n neud efo rheoli coedlanna yma rwan, lly. Sa'ch chi'n gallu rhoi trosolwg i ni o'r gwaith amgylcheddol eraill sy'n cael ei wneud yma, Huw?
Da ni wedi bod mewn cynlluniau amgylcheddol, da ni wedi bod i tir gofal, wedyn glastir a glastir woodlands, oherwydd natur y lle i raddau, oherwydd bod gen ni ambell i gynefin gwahanol yma, lle y coedlan yn ganran mawr, felly oedd hwnna'n eitha amlwg i ni fynd lawr y trywydd yna, lle. A mae hynny wedi bod yn ddarn mawr o'r prosiect, sef oedd o'n bla o rhododendrons, a wedyn cael dipyn o grant i cael gwared ar hwnna, hwnnw wedi bod fydd yn ni, oherwydd yn ni'n colli stoc, defed yn bita, mae wenwyn. So, da ni wedi cael buddiannau hynny hefyd, lle. Oedd o raid i ni dowlyd ambell i a tynnu un lle, ac o hwnna'n goed feddal, o gynnau bentwr o goed yn y buarth, ddim yn siŵr iawn be i wneud, a wedyn y sydyn iawn oedd o'n wneud synwyr i ni fynd lawr y trwydd o'i jipio fo, roed o fewn i'r biomass boiler. So i raddau, mae di y cynllun glastir, mae di arwen i rhywsyn i gilydd i'r trywydd lle da ni wan, lle. Gwaith arall sydd wedi cael ei wneud ym da ni wedi bod yn ffodus o gael y ffens yma hefo Ymddiriedolaeth Natur Gogledd Cymru, Mae'n ffens arall lle llith nhw ati i fwrw ac i fflygu hi. Mae'n o'i hen rych. Mae hwnna wedi bod yn ddiddorol lle terfynu ar coed. Cynnaf un oedd eraill sgen ni ydy y weirglodd yma. Hefyd mae'n y barcdir yn agosach at y tŷ. Felly, ydy, dyn ni wedi gofod dysgu dipyn dros y blynyddoedd diwethaf, ond ynden, dwi'n meddwl dyn ni'n cyrraedd y nod efo rhai pethau.
Okay, so Hugh mentioned that he's done a lot of work with you and the Wildlife Trust, Johnny, on various activities, no fence, tree planting, and as you can see behind us, mechanical hedge laying. So can you just give an overview of the work that you've done here with Hugh in Plas yn Iâl, and just an overview of the concept of mechanical hedge laying as it's not your usual hedge laying you'd see through the various agri-environmental schemes?
Yeah, certainly, David. So we first came here to Plas yn Iâl nearly 10 years ago, 2012. We made contact with Hugh to try and get this method of getting trees on the farm using this no-fence tree planting technique. So as the name suggests, it's planting trees without the requirement of any fences. And I think Hugh was particularly keen for more trees on the farm, but not necessarily excluding livestock from those areas. So it was a perfect location for us to try and demonstrate the method. So Hugh was open to the idea. And there were various locations where trees have been established, pot-grown trees planted in gorse. So there's pockets of gorse, of unproductive areas of the farm that the gorse has been able to use those trees to act as a nursery shrub to protect those trees, particularly oak and Scots pine. But there are also some steep slopes where we've been able to plant trees at an angle. So if you plant the tree at a 45-degree angle, perpendicular to the slope, the leading shoot is able to escape the browsing pressure of the sheep, and it grows like a hockey stick. But that's not really a problem to Hugh, because it means we're quite high up here. It gives some shade and shelter for his livestock, and it's not taking any land out of production. It's just thinking about planting trees like a sheep, really. And if you plant the tree in the right way, the tree should survive and should stay there. On the hedging side of things, this has been quite recent for us, really. A big issue that we've noticed that we're quite concerned about at North Wales Wildlife Trust is the sort of unsustainable approach to managing hedgerows. About 15 years ago in Aylesbury, there was a farmer and son that costed up laying their hedges on the farm, realised it was going to cost a lot of money, tens of thousands of pounds to lay the hedges as you would traditionally. So it's got to be an easy way of doing it. So they got the chainsaw out, got the telehandler out, and just decided to pleach the stem in this way, in a pleacher like this, and get the telehandler and just gently push the stem over. And they laid all their hedges themselves. Just took them a few days, for 600 quid, as opposed to something that would take 3 months that would cost like 50 grand. But what's been interesting in Aylesbury is the benefits to wildlife. So they refer to it as wildlife hedge laying. I think mechanical hedge laying is probably a better way to describe it myself. But instead of going to your hedge and coppicing it to the ground and losing all its wildlife value, by laying the hedge like this, you protected an old hedge that's been there for decades, and it flowers and fruits in its first year. You haven't got to deal with all the brash in the field, you haven't got to burn it, there's no nettles in the field. And up here, because we're so exposed, it's given immediate shelter for Hugh's livestock. And because it's on the edge of a wood, it's given a buffering effect from the wind. So we're hoping that the effect of the hedge, because we haven't cleared it, we've laid it and maintained its structural integrity, it's going to be a buffer against the prevailing westerly wind to prevent some of this this larch and oak that's in the wood from any wind blow. And it's an old cloud hedge bank. And we laid this, there's about, I'd say, this was done in a day, with 3 guys on the saw, 1 guy on a 360, a 10-ton 360 with a grab. So if you're accurate with your stem, with your pleacher, you can see I've pleached quite high on this stem. It's a big old hawthorn, never been touched. And I've pleached about 70% of the way through the stem on this pleacher. It's a big one, probably the biggest one I've done. An important thing to do is to take the leading heel off the stem to prevent it snapping. If I hadn't have nibbled off with the saw a little bit of the leading heel, there would have been some resistance on the wood and it would have taken a lot more and it might have snapped. But by doing that, nice big pleacher, about 70% of the way through, get hold of it. You don't necessarily need a 360 with a grab. You could use a telehandler if you're careful. I mean, you can see the size of the pleacher. That's the size of, I can hardly lift it up, but you know, it just goes to show that you are able to, you know, lay a hawthorn that big without killing it. And as you can see, it's flowering, it's regrowing from the crown, and its wildlife value is protected. It's flowering and it retains all its flowers and fruits. And it's the cost and the speed of doing it. So we'd really like to see this as an alternative method promoted with future agri-environment schemes, you know, as opposed to more unsustainable methods of coppicing it to the ground.
Yeah, regarding the width of the hedgerow, it's quite thick, isn't it? Do you think that's an issue with farmers, and do you reckon that the uptake would be? How do you think the uptake would be on this kind of hedge laying?
Yeah, I mean, I think in Aylesbury they still flail the sides of the hedge to form this nice A-shaped hedge, and particularly there's a lot of cattle. It's mostly beef farming down there, so the cows are able to nibble the regrowth to form these nice broad A-shaped hedges. So you know, that's absolutely fine. Hugh could come along with a flail and tidy the edges up. But obviously, ecologically, you really want to be looking at, you know, 2 to 3 meters. I know the glass tier minimum width is 3 meters. So yeah, it's a conversation you have to have. You know, you've got to be prepared to have a nice broad head. I mean, I think the benefit for protection for livestock from the exposed element, particularly in the harsh winter months and in the hot summers, this is giving a lot of shade and shelter for livestock. I know Hugh was really into shelter for his livestock up here. So obviously, yeah, you've got to be prepared to sacrifice 2, possibly 3 meters. But if you're accurate with your pleacher, you should be able to lay the stem in a straight line. I mean, this is quite a good example because it's on the Cloud hedge bank. It's laid right on top of the bank, and we haven't had to sacrifice too much. I mean, this is obviously on the edge of a wood, so we've put in a fence for the farmer at the bottom of the Cloud. But if it was in a field, obviously we'd probably do it on the other side. I mean, this is getting on for 4 meters wide, this one. The fence could probably have been brought in a bit more to follow the bottom of the bank to here maybe. But the farmer's happy because it's benefiting his woodland.